New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network proudly presents the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series, January 31st through April 4th. Embrace nonviolence every day with our 64 unique video meditations. Join us at 6 a.m. Mountain Time or watch anytime on our YouTube channel. Featuring a collection of New Thought voices, the 2025 season for Nonviolence Meditation Series. Only on New Thought Media Network. January 31st through April 4th.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here. Yes, I'm dancing to the theme music. I don't know what that does, but physically it just brings me fully present into this moment, this topic, this way of being. So, just in case this is your first time and you're like, who is this? Who's this strange woman that is dancing? And I'm here for the inclusive church, which is a very serious topic. And it is. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm the author of the book, Stained Glass Spirit, Becoming a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Require Sameness. And also the host of this show, Inclusive Church, where every week on Tuesdays at noon Mountain Time, we come together to just explore some aspect of what it means to be in an inclusive spiritual community, how you might become or sustain being a spiritual community that's inclusive. And sometimes I have guests, and sometimes I simply share an idea, a thought, a tool, a technique, something for you to think about. Now, today, the theme is the NICETY culture, or the NICETY church. And what's so fabulous about this is a guest I had on the show last year used this phrase to describe the spiritual communities where people are so invested in being nice that they are uncomfortable and sometimes even unwilling to actually engage in authentic, honest conversation. And that this is an environment or culture that people are, well, so invested in being nice and using a description of nice as we don't ever disagree. We simply are quiet If I disagree with what someone is doing or what they are suggesting, I just smile and don't say anything to challenge them. Or if they are in a position of authority in our spiritual community, then they must know more than I know, and they must know what's best for me. And so I just follow their lead because that's the nice thing to do. So this whole idea of the nicety culture, we talked a little bit about that, but I haven't let go of it. And part of the reason I haven't let go of it is probably for at least 20 years, probably more than that. I have a phrase that I use in a lot of the work that I do in organizations. I refer to it as the conspiracy of courtesy, right? The conspiracy of courtesy, that we'll use courtesy, but we're doing it because we are trying to tamp down any unique ideas. We are trying to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. And so it's very similar. And in our spiritual communities that are committed to being inclusive, this will backfire on you. Now, maybe it is common sense that it will backfire on you if everybody's being nice, but they're not really sharing what is important to them, what they need, what they would like to hear in the music, what kinds of examples will really resonate with them, but they're being nice, right? Another way this shows up in spiritual communities that backfires is that, and I have seen this more online. I'm just thinking for a minute. Have I seen it more online, or is it just that I see it online because we're all online so much more? Well, for this moment, I'm going to say maybe I just recognize it more since we've been online so much in the last few years. So let's say that you are hosting an event or a class online, and there are a lot of people, and I don't mean hundreds of people, right? But there are a dozen people or there are 20 people. And let's say that Tracy is presenting, and over in the chat in the NICETY culture, there are people there'll be 3 people or 4 people who are part of the leadership or are part of the group that planned the event, and I'm facilitating or I'm presenting something like I'm talking now, and they're in the chat going, "Oh, that's really good," or "Oh, yeah, we so appreciate you," or "Oh, right," all of these kind of accolades and things that are a little extra. They're not directly related to what I just said, but they're all about, "Oh, we have to let Tracy know that she's really good." When really what it comes across looking like is you're not trusting the mass of the people to share what they are experiencing, good or bad, because you're priming the pumper. You're already connected to Tracy, and you are modeling that the only thing that should be put in the chat is praise or compliments. And that happens more often than I ever realized. And then I began noticing how much it happens in person as well, that there are people who feel like they have to take care of the presenter or take care of the minister from an ego perspective and make sure they're pumped up. So here's the problem with that. One of the problems with that is it closes the door for the people who may have a question or who may have a different idea because what people are aggressively doing is, well, that's the nice thing to do. And we're nice people, so we're going to compliment this person. Or if people comment, we're going to go, thank you for commenting. And there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line, because I'm not saying you shouldn't be nice. I'm not saying you shouldn't compliment people. I'm saying if you are a leader and you are trying to develop or expand an inclusive culture in your spiritual community, then you want to be careful that you're not training or modeling the only way to communicate is an ego-based niceness. So I see that you're resonating with this. I'm so glad you're with me today. Anita, thank you for hanging out. And Marjorie, hey, so good to see you. Kind of see you, to feel your energetic vibration. And then Anita, I think I agree with you completely. Difficulty arises when you have individuals who are avoidant of anything that looks like conflict. They don't speak up when they disagree, or they often won't even speak up when they just have a question that they are afraid the person they're asking will take it personally or will see it as a challenge, because that would cause some conflict, and I'm too nice for that. And so that piece is really a dangerous environment to create or to sustain in an environment, or when you have made the commitment to be inclusive. Now, brief reminder, when I'm talking about being inclusive, of course, we think about people from different racial or ethnic groups. But in our spiritual communities, I'm also talking about being inclusive of people from different age groups, maybe people who speak different languages, people who have different physical abilities and disabilities, people who may be different from one another or from the norm based on sexual orientation or gender identity, people who have different professions, people who really bring insights or cultural norms from different communities, different parts of town. So when I am saying inclusion, I am thinking about and referring to all the ways that we are different from one another, both genetically and culturally. And that is a big, big challenge, to be keeping all of these ways in mind. Anita, also, thanks for sharing this. You're absolutely right. The other side is the person who speaks up in disagreement and gets labeled the troublemaker. This happens way too often in spiritual communities. And it's really ironic in New Thought spiritual communities, where we emphasize every individual is a unique emanation of, a unique creation of the one source, the one creator, with a unique combination of qualities and attributes here to express that unique expression of God. And so it's weird to me that then when someone has a different opinion or a different experience in the world, that we label them as, oh, you're not fitting in, you are trying to make trouble, just because they speak up and say, I have a different perspective. I am thinking about this differently than you are. And because we are in community together, we need to take into consideration many different ways to look at us subject, a topic, an issue, an opportunity. So we often will say we are inclusive, we want to be inclusive, we're committed to being inclusive, but our behavior sends a different message. So for those of us who are in leadership, we need to be conscious and aware that what we say to people and how we show up needs to model a balance between being respectful and being open to a different way to approach something. And we need to engage people in an intentional way if they have a different view or a different experience. You know, one of the things I love most, some of you know, I often get the opportunity to lead two different discussions around the content of the Science of Mind textbook. I often get to do that on Sunday mornings at my home community, CSL Dallas. And I often get to do it on Saturday mornings as part of the Saturday Morning Science of Mind series right here on the New Thought Media Network. And one of the things that I love most about that is that people will put in the chat a question or a comment, or if it's the Sunday morning series, they may actually come online and ask a question or share their insight about whatever we're talking about. And it's so fascinating to me how often I have this little voice that's whispering in the back of my ear as I'm listening, and I'm going, well, I don't think that, or I'm not sure that I agree with that. Right? I'm thinking that thought, and the little voice in the back of my head says, stay fully present. Stay fully present. Listen to what this person is saying from their perspective, and then try to build a bridge versus listen to what this person is saying and argue with them or make them wrong or tell them they don't know what they're talking about, right? Because it's, oh, wait, you've had a different experience than I have. Let me get a taste of that. And then there are times when I have to say, well, that's not exactly what Ernest Holmes is teaching. And then there are other times when I'm like, oh, that's just another way of saying this. We're talking about the same thing, just using different language or different examples or different approach. Like we're approaching it from runway K and runway Q, but we're headed to the exact same takeoff point. And I love that. Marjorie, can we encourage participation and engagement from people by being more interested in what we do not yet know than in what we think we already know to be true? Amen. Hallelujah. Yes. Aho. I will affirm that in so many ways. And that is part of what helps an inclusive culture grow and to become the norm. However, what happens a lot for us is we live in a society where you get rewarded, right, for making the other person wrong. You get rewarded for there being a binary yes or no, when so much of what we're doing in spiritual community is actually engaging around what's between a yes and a no. And we can learn from one another. So this whole idea about the nicety culture, is simply giving us the opportunity to say, it's not that we don't want to be nice people. We do, and we are nice people. But we don't want to allow being nice to get in the way of being inclusive. We don't want to let being nice get in the way of being authentic. We don't want to let being nice get in the way of an expanded example of humanity. And that's why that's the topic this week. So I invite you to think about yourself. Like, when have you felt like you need to, muzzle yourself or keep your thoughts to yourself because it will upset the apple cart, so to speak, or it will make someone else uncomfortable? And I can raise my hand. I could raise my hand really high. There have been more times than I can count in my overall life. If I just even look at in the last year, I tend to be pretty clear about my opinions and my understanding of different situations or different content. And yes, there's still been times when I've been like, okay, just don't even bring it up because I don't want to deal with the upset I believe will happen. And we're trained to do that. So I think for each one of us, we get to look at, when is it important to offer a view that's different? Because if I do that with every single thing in every single situation, then that's not helpful either. Because then it really does begin to feel like I'm just looking to make other people wrong. But if there are times when there's a conversation and it seems like everybody is on the same page, but I'm not. Like, they have not thought about this one concern or this one issue. And that happens a lot. And so I have trained myself now over the years to be much more willing to say, look, I understand it seems like the conversation is going this way, but I keep thinking about how that might be perceived by people under the age of 40 who are part of our community too. Or I think we're missing, or we need to actually get some input from the members of our community who are African American, because what I'm hearing, it's not that it's bad, but I know I'm having a reaction to it, and I realize it's coming from my experience as a Black woman. So we might want to check out, and talk to a few other people, because it might just be my experience. But if it's not, then that's not going to play well. So I hope what you're seeing and hearing is part of it is our own responsibility to bring up things that are different from the norm in a way that is not accusatory or blaming or shaming. And that is a skill. So I'm able to do it now much of the time, but I'm primarily able to do it because I have practiced it now for years. And if I'm really reacting strongly and that something is happening in the conversation that emotionally hits me very strongly, I may blurt out, or I may react from that place of emotion, and I'm not as careful And I have to trust that there are times like that someone else in the group understands where I'm coming from and doesn't just cut off the conversation and says, wait a minute, all right, take a breath. And then we start exploring what is it that Tracy was reacting to. Now, I'm using myself as an example just because I'm here and I can take responsibility for myself. But what I'm describing really is behavior that I have seen over and over and over again with different people on different issues or with different concerns. So if I have some responsibility for how I drop my different opinion, perception, or experience into the conversation, I'm willing to own that responsibility. However, what I need for you to own is that if no matter how I put the information into the conversation, whether I do it carefully and without blaming and shaming, or whether I'm reacting to something that was said and I come in hot, angry, hurt, led by emotion, then I also expect that that there will be someone in the group who will say, wow, we didn't think about that. Let's take a breath. Or other ways you could respond if you are in the group, in a member of the group, or in a class online and somebody dumps something in the chat or verbally shares something that's very emotionally laden, then there are lots of ways to respond to that. Off the top of my head, a few. Wow, I never would have thought of that. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Oh, now that's an interesting experience. Can you say more about that? Ooh, you clearly are having a reaction to that. I'm not sure I understand, but I want to. So can you say a little bit more? Like, don't cut off the emotion like, oh, you seem to be really emotional about that. You want to go take a break and come back when you're calmer? Like, do not tell me to calm down. Do not tone police me. Do not gaslight me if I am the person who is bringing a different perspective. So here is a place where some aspects of emphasizing niceness can pay off, because really the kind of nice we're looking for is respectful. And Marjorie, I love the question, is there a discernment between being nice and being kind? And I don't know that I have I don't know that I have a universal answer to that question. But what I will share from my experience is this. About half the time when people are using nice and kind, they're saying the same thing, and they're using them as synonyms. And in their mind, when they're thinking about it, if you're nice, you're kind. And if you're kind, you're nice. Because nice is not, even though I'm talking about what happens if nice is used inappropriately, but the same thing would be true for kind. If you think you're being kind by letting that person have their opinion, even though you disagree, and I can, just go with the flow, that sometimes that's appropriate. But also, if taken to the extreme, then that will create the exact same negative outcome to your intention of being inclusive. I've had people share with me how, the way they see those two things as very different. But in any case, if either one of them are used to avoid engagement with people who have a different experience, then it is counterproductive to the commitment to being inclusive. So what actually has to happen, I'm pausing because I don't often say like something has to happen or must happen. So I'm going to frame it this way. What we must pay attention to and then decide what to do about it is we must pay attention to what is our goal and is our behavior supporting it. It's not more about intent, it's more about impact. So when we are dealing with people who are really different from one another, I can have the best intentions to be inclusive or to be nice or to be kind. And I may do things that I think are kind. But the impact of me doing that is that the other person doesn't feel heard, supported, because I didn't affirm anything they said. I just stayed quiet so that I wouldn't create a problem. Or I stayed quiet because they are the one who has that opinion, and my intent is to kind of give them their space. But then over time, if I keep doing that, the impact is we don't really have authentic conversations. They don't really know me. They're with me every week for 10 weeks in a class, but they haven't really gotten to know me. I'm hearing a lot about them, and I don't agree with it, but they're not getting to know me. That's not creating an inclusive community. We are making a decision. We've been working on a project together. I'm working on a curriculum design with 2 other people. And we've been working on this curriculum design since September. And now it is March. And, we knew that we would be working together for, approximately 6 months in order to design this new course. And we each have very different experiences, which is one of the reasons the 3 of us came together to do the course. So the impact of not sharing our individual perspectives from our different cultural backgrounds, our different ages, our different ways of being in the world, our different, having lived in different parts of the world, not just the US, but different parts of the world, all of that. And so it's created some uncomfortable moments, right? It's created some uncomfortable moments. But if we were taking being nice or kind to the comfort level, like we just want to make everything easy, we would not have as good a course, a curriculum, as we are going to have in the next few weeks as we finish the design. Because it is critical that we build the skill to disagree, that we learn how to do that we practice sharing the why, and we do that in a way that is respectful. So yes, Marjorie, I love this. I think this is a really important thing. I'm therefore interested in how the impact of my intention to include is actually received by others. I think these are some really important conversations to have. And not every, you don't have that conversation with every person every day. But we're talking about this in the context of building a spiritual community where there are so many different kinds of people. And so, yes, if I'm working on a team, then periodically we're going to have conversations about, how can I communicate more effectively with you? Like, I don't think there are too many situations where I could come up to you and say, it's my intention to be inclusive, and do you feel included? That's a little abstract, but there are things, right, that we would be looking for. The communication skill. I can proactively, I do this with a lot of groups in team building and in cross-cultural communication. And it's an activity called In an Ideal World. And so I've done this with teams I'm a part of, where we'll just take 15 minutes in a meeting and we'll say, okay, in an ideal world, how would conflict be resolved? And you just go around the group and people talk about, like, you're not in conflict right at that moment. And I'm always amazed. People will say, well, in an ideal world, conflict would be resolved by us doing A, B, and C. And often there are things that I would never think to do. But now I know that that's how that person has been culturally raised, or has, through therapy, come to a process of knowing that's the approach they take. And then we can have a conversation as a group, deciding together how we will approach conflict. In a spiritual community, well, we're going to pray first, maybe, right? Or then once I have done my individual prayer, if it's a group thing, then I'm going to call for prayer in the group. Or maybe it is Marjorie said something that really made me feel uncomfortable. So I'm committed within a week that I'm going to email or text or follow up, connect with Marjorie directly and ask if we can have a conversation about that. Because I'm pretty sure her intent was positive, and she may not even know what that triggered in me. So we can talk about it, right? That is what is required. So it's like we agree of ways to share impact, and that has to be built into the culture. Otherwise, it's only a few individuals maybe having these kinds of impactful conversations. So this is a toolkit episode, and normally I try to keep those within 35 minutes. So I'm going to do some summary comments, and feel free to put in the chat any reaction that you're having, or if you were summarizing what's really important, what would you say is important for us to remember or to think about, so that we don't create a nicety culture that sabotages our commitment to being inclusive. So there are three things that come to mind for me. One is it's really important to be intentional. So don't deny that there are people who are being so nice, they're not actually sharing what they really think. So don't be in denial about, the fact that when you have a lot of diversity, you have differences, and that they can create a little bit of discomfort. So don't be in denial about that. Number two, do whatever you can as a leader to both model and create situations or scenarios where people can practice sharing details of the challenges they may be experiencing as they engage with people who are different from them. And again, this isn't, it could be racial, ethnic, but I can think of examples where, we've had someone in our spiritual community who is transgender, and they were in the process of making the transition, and there were people in the community who were very uncomfortable, but they didn't want to talk about it, right? And I do know we have had people in some communities who actually have left their community because they were so uncomfortable. So make sure that you are modeling whenever you can how to bring up what you're uncomfortable about, or being willing to share something that's not working. So that's number 2. And then number 3, I would say, when you're problem solving, just intentionally seek out feedback or input from people you are uncomfortable with, or people who you expect might have a different view. This is critical in helping us become more comfortable that everybody doesn't think the same way that we do, and everybody hasn't had the same experience that we've had. So when you train yourself to intentionally go look for someone with a different view, it also takes the edge off. Like, oh, I asked for a different opinion. I asked for a different experience. I asked to understand something that I saw in a movie that didn't make sense to me. I'm going to go to someone with that background and say, tell me more, right? And so when we begin to do that, we can still be nice. We can still be kind. We can still be respectful, but we stop avoiding it just because someone's different, or avoiding a person because they're different, or avoiding collecting a different idea or experience. It's all about the practice. And so my suggestion for you in the coming week is to look for opportunities where you can practice both being nice or kind and seeking out the opportunity to share your perspective, which is different, or to invite someone else's perspective who you think will be different from your own. This is how we keep from having the NICETY culture sabotage our efforts to be inclusive. Please hang out with me throughout the week over at stainedglassspirit.net or Stained Glass Spirit at Facebook, where throughout the week we post quotations, articles, ideas, and things to think about so that you can have a spiritual community where oneness does not require sameness. My name is Tracy Brown. I'll see you again next week right here on the Inclusive Church on the New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.